Finally, no, I don't know how the adjustments. They just replaced them actually today. So there's the left side. No, your left side. Yeah, that's the unlock. There's like a twist dial. You want to be able to recline. It's like clicks. Try it. There you go. You like to be a low rider. I know you like to be able to sit down and. Yeah, the old chairs were. The last time we had a staff meeting, we had two people sitting like this because they were blown out and it wouldn't even come up anymore. Just like on the floor.
Oh, you know what? Let me try this. Thing.
How's sleep going back? Great. And the champs, it's like front three.
You can try that.
That's exciting.
The other one is that
I'm
not sure how it
really like to find out if they're working.
Pilot plant, the Terra's just it. So yeah.
When you guys do take care of nannies or stay home?
He just started daycare. So I just came back over.
Where you don't take it?
So I'm down, you were like on high school, but down right there. Actually, our neighborhood's on one side of the high school, the other side of the neighborhood.
That's all.
They're great.
This is your email?
Those are my personal ones, which I won't get here.
Okay. Which email you just raised?
Oh, the one I just put on there? Yeah, because it came through here.
Yeah, that one. Yes. Straight to the sign page.
ATSP addendum. Final with appendices. I will fix that. The email. You send an email to.
What time to get out of?
Okay, I'll get it. That's fine.
Something is blocking the access to the form.
To the what now?
There is only the sign-in page that should go through, but
To get into it.
yes, to get internet access.
Oh.
Because it is connected to if you look on here, it's connected to the Wi-Fi. The only thing is need to accept the form, the form that we just fill it out, but something is stopping.
Yeah, because I clicked on this.
Yeah,
It says continue, but I keep getting, it never connects
that's on the Wi-Fi.
They're all brand new.
for the Wi-Fi. Yeah.
There's like there you go. And then if you want, I think this one allows it to tilt.
Would have brought my Wi-Fi.
You're not going to need this anymore, Steve. It's your
Well,
last
I'm trying to get Zoom off of this thing because I don't use it for anything else. And it keeps
Oh,
coming
oh.
up as
okay. I thought you were trying to get Wordable on.
No, no,
After
no.
this meeting.
Well, don't give me a chance to do
Keeps
that.
telling me that the Zoom version is out of date and it's a security risk, but I can't get it off.
In case I cannot solve it right now, I would suggest when you get home, you connect to the internet, go to the Zoom page, download Zoom again. Okay, download.
Well, I did that here.
And that's it. We need
Downloads. This is the Zoom install.
okay. There you go. That's only.
It keeps asking me
It's
to
already-
sign in.
Yes, that's
halfway through
the
June.
connection to get to the application itself.
Because this is full install, right?
That's
But it never installs it. It just goes right to the sign in page.
applications, and it don't, there is a file that's supposed to go.
Try that one. It was-
You know what?
That didn't work either. I mean, you could try it, see what it is, but. Try that one. A while ago. Have no idea.
Imagine everybody's gonna be stuck in traffic. Was Duke Street bad?
It wasn't fun, actually. For the old town
Well,
part.
coming from, you come from City Hall?
Yeah, Duke going from this direction is fine.
This goes back to that one.
Yeah,
Again, wasn't there when I installed it and isn't there now.
okay, yeah. Well, and now they're tearing up sidewalks and replacing them. Why are they replacing sidewalks when Duke Street's gonna get redone? Right up here at South Baker,
This file has been,
they've been tearing out the sidewalks and pouring new
was
sidewalks.
moved from there, so that's.
On this side, on our side of the street.
It's not more with the device, so I don't know how.
What?
Was deleted from there.
Oh.
That now Zoom trying to.
I don't know.
for this file.
I-
But I would think if you tried to install it again, it would overwrite everything. but
That's,
it's-
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
I
but
don't
it's- But it's
know.
not doing that because I have this Zoom installer up here. Which is what I got from the.
That's the one here.
It's
yeah,
at, it's
which I got
literally
from
right at the
Zoom-
intersection
current Zoom site.
of Duke and
It
Quaker.
just tells me I have a secure, well, because you don't have an internet connection, but. If
There
you
were,
did
there
have
were
an
some,
internet
yeah,
connection,
there
it
were
just
some
switches
curb ramps
speed,
being
which-
done, but there were also segments they had dug out.
The only thing
Because they
I
had the
can
right,
think of
I knew
that
because they had the
happened
right
is
turn lane
maybe
closed
Zoom
coming on the
changed
South
the
Quaker
way
because they were tearing that up.
installation, like this is a single file
That's
with one-
probably what happened. That's why they said they lost all their business. Stocks only $70. Different.
So the problem is now, we have to make sure that we can find an old installer that can install the old way, so you can install that file with the old one used to be.
No, I'd have no way of doing that.
This, that's,
Now, do we have, does Dash have a Zoom business account? Okay, because they have help, like phone help services, available, which I just have like a regular Zoom thing with what they required me to do. So I don't have access to any kind of tech support. Is that something you could reach out to them to see what options they
That
could
was
have?
literally
that account, they administration manager, I don't have.
You don't have that, okay. Okay, well, let me.
So what's that one right down American? It's in this gorgeous old storefront.
He was no more successful than I was trying to move that Zoom application. So I think the next step might be to Zoom tech support. So I understand this is, he actually has a business account that has in-person tech support attached to it.
Okay.
So he says you and somebody else control that?
Yes.
Okay.
Just reach out to Beth anytime and we'll set something up.
Okay, great.
Sound good?
I appreciate you. But I second Southwest, that's the most.
Something is off, the file was deleted, the configuration, the only way you can see to clean up.
Oh, so you're telling me the rest of
Oh.
your story.
Yeah, it was, I attended remotely.
So that I wait.
Now, if the kids on that cycle.
We'll see if we can get them set up with them.
We were-
Okay.
and they just took the mold off. But no matter what we try to do, this is our mission.
No.
It was like, okay, well, you need to engage in the orderly shutdown. But it's zero. But no, like then, never actually.
Yeah, they're tasting the
Chairperson tried to.
Would you like to try 18 watts?
So.
Have they really?
I saw a post article, watching a post article that they were proposing zero out, which a lot of people in Congress were not
Oh,
happy
well,
about.
no, we've been doing business with congressional staffers over the past week. They're all very supportive of this. So I don't think we're actually going to get eliminated. The problem is what can we do? But the OMB director shut down for fiscal year, which is different than the president budget was. So we're sort of in a dilemma. We're operating as if they operate on 26 to engage in what was called the orderly shutdown. Pending.
When's your retirement? Or is it up in the air?
I told the chairperson when I was looking at the end of the year, with what's going on here, tomorrow I have a hard time reaching him. So I told him about the fight for 26 to be certain I can do something. Whether it's too early to shut down, hopefully not, just, you know,
You're right. If they shut it down,
partake in
especially outside.
looks like
But
it's,
even the strong ones, like, oh, everything's still so.
the 60-day
They
process.
put us in the.
Except for the last one. That's what makes
We were the only person. They were like, you can stay here. That was crazy.
as long as I keep getting from the things, you know.
Yeah.
It's just not- it's just not- Here comes the-
I'm just gonna break it and then figure out later if they.
Which is the way I was. But that's been my life.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Call the meeting to order. Thank you all for being here tonight. Ask our secretary to call the roll.
Chair Kaplan,
Here.
Vice Chair Kleist,
Present.
Arish Gudger, Matt Harris, Praveen Kathpal, Jesse O'Connell,
Here.
Hillary Orr, Kirsten Phelps,
Here.
Laura Gates, Ajay Thomas, Arthur Wicks.
Here.
Chair Kaplan, you have a quorum. Those absent, Arish Gudger, Matt Harris, and Ajay Thomas.
All right, thanks. Yeah, we have a lighter crew tonight, but thank you all for being here. I know Arish may join us on the Zoom for part of the meeting if he's feeling up to it. We'll go into our public comment. I'll ask we have a statement we typically read. I'll ask if we have any speakers who've signed up.
We do not.
We do not. Okay. Is there any speaker in the room? We'll ask if there are any speakers on the Zoom. You can use the raise hand feature. We'll pause briefly, and then if anyone does ask for recognition, I'll read the statement before we have you speak. All right.
Doesn't look like it.
All right. We'll go ahead and close public comment. We'll
Your
move into it's the time expired. We'll move into our chair's report, and we have an icebreaker exercise that we do. We try to do something every year. Last year we did a little bit of a competition with the staff and about transit usage, and especially our non-Alexandria residing staff kind of kicked our butts, for lack of a better word. But this year I wanted to go back to something more traditional where we would just kind of get to know each other a little better and learn a little bit more about our community and the places that make it special and that we support. So the prompt, which I sent out by email, was to talk about your favorite small business in Alexandria and to tell us, where it is, why it's your favorite small business, how they support the community, and then how to get there on transit. So Dash, WMATA, what the routes are and what the closest stops are. So hopefully, if you haven't had a chance to do it, just take a moment to think about what your submission is going to be. I know I had asked, and I didn't do this, but if anyone may have submitted pictures to illustrate their small businesses, did you get any from anyone? Okay, because I was going to let those with pictures go first, but otherwise we can just go around the room. I also promised that there would be dessert. So notice there are blueberry muffins that are on the table. So please help yourself to those. It is the Jordan Marsh recipe. They were a department store in the Boston area. They don't exist anymore, but their cafe sold these incredible blueberry muffins I never had, but the recipe survives and people swear by them. So let me know what you think. I cut some in half, but I thought some people might like a half instead of a whole. So please help yourself. So, oh, thank you very much. So we can start the icebreaker exercise. I can start and we can go around, or if someone else would like to volunteer and we can start at that part of the table. Okay, and I know Praveen, you already actually sent me his very early on. I appreciated getting to learn about a place I hadn't been to. So.
Sure. Well, hopefully
those of you who've been on the board with me would expect this was a data-oriented activity. So I pulled my credit card transactions since the first day of Dash's current fiscal year, and then took the highest frequency vendor, and it wasn't even close. It's Swings Coffee on Monroe, and you can get there on the 33 bus. You have to, get off at Mount Vernon and walk over. There are other ways to get there on transit using WMATA, but we don't need to go into the details of those.
Like the products, or do they contribute to do they give back to the community, or?
They are, well, first of all, it's really interesting that there's just in the middle of the neighborhood, basically an industrial use, right? Where they're roasting beans. It's a roasting facility. But their cafe just always has like really well-trained baristas, great quality espresso drinks. It's always a place to run into neighbors. It's always good music on. So good place to just grab a coffee, go with a friend, have a meeting, that kind of thing.
Thank you. I guess we'll go around the table with Laura next, and then we'll keep going clockwise. Sure.
I decided on two because the first one that I picked.
Oh, Laura, don't forget your mic.
First one I picked maybe sounded a little odd. It's a place called the Neighborhood Pharmacy. It's in Delray. I don't mean odd, but I think at first I thought about some food places, many of which I frequent. So also on my mind is well, let me first say, so neighborhood pharmacy, I use a lot actually for my parents. I have elderly parents who have recently moved to Alexandria, and their level of service and sort of care for the individual patients, they remember my name, they remember my parents' name, they're always asking about them. So it's just a place that I feel really fondly about. So that's probably the first. I think I'll just pick one. So that's it.
And how do you get there?
Oh, okay, that's right. Well, so I walk, but I believe you could take, of course, the 10A, 10B bus down Monroe, and then I suppose you could also take one of the lines up Commonwealth to do the same thing. So that's the 33. Am I doing that right? The Potomac Yard one?
Yep.
Sorry, I'm still getting better. Okay, thank you.
Oh, did you want to do your second business? Or?
Oh, I was thinking about the bagel shop in also in Delray, but I also
Okay.
like Jewish. I'm a bagel girl, so either one works.
Just as a public service announcement about neighborhood pharmacy, if you have any expired medications at home, they have a disposal box for expired drugs there. No questions asked.
Yeah, and they're lovely people. There you go. Okay.
I think I was gonna say on King Street, a place called King Street Cafe. It's just a little greasy spoon griddle top restaurant, which are increasingly rare on the east side of the city. It's at the King and Patrick Street stop, so 30, 31, and the trolley service it. But just it sticks out on King Street anymore as a nice affordable place to eat.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Good choice. Josh, you're welcome to participate if you'd like.
Sure. So I also have two. But mine is a little bit of a story because it's I believe it's a local business. My favorite spot is Don Taco on King Street, and there's a unique reason. Well, I love margaritas, and they got good margaritas, and I like their food and the atmosphere. But also, I don't think anybody knows this, but that was the location where I was recovering after my travels and my grilling, courtesy of Steve here and some other board members during my interview process. And so I had gone to Don Taco to have a drink after that, and I got a phone call that the board was interested in moving forward with me. So it's a special place because it was my introduction to Dash and here. So then from a business perspective.
Oh, and what bus stop?
Sorry. Yeah. So the trolley, trolley 3031. Yes. Sorry. And there's a bus stop right out front, right on that block. And I don't know if that's changing, but in the consolidation of the stops on King Street, but also on the 30, the other side, which is a favorite spot for me, my team here knows I like to go there for business meetings or conversations outside the office, is Los Totecos. So both the Mexican theme here, as you can tell, it's my favorite. Since Hillary's going to be moving right next door, you're going to have to come with me to Los Totecos. Since it's like right there, super, super easy. But those are my two.
How do we get to that one?
30.
30.
Yeah. Also a stop out front.
Because it is so kid friendly and it's such a lovely place to be able to just like meet up with people and be outside and have a yummy drink, and the kids are totally entertained. And I most recently loved Hayden because of the mulberry trees, and I think mulberry is a very underrated berry. I don't understand why like we don't do more with mulberries because they're everywhere. So I like when they like fall off the tree and I just eat them off the table, but also then they're like you're safe and purple stuff. So that's a
And you're eating kids.
yeah, love hate relationship. But it works for the whole family, and anyway, so it's a much better use of that space than what used to be. There was just kind of an empty field in the middle of a downtown neighborhood. And you get there on the 33 or Mount Vernon, but there's also a bike share station.
Well, continuing with the restaurant theme, our favorite go-to place is Fratelli's. It's an Italian restaurant that's located on Van Doren, pretty much across the street from where the shopping center is, the Safeway, and a few other locations. Closest thing that we've been able to find in this area to the Italian food that my wife and I enjoy moving down from the New Jersey area. And while they don't have pizza there, it's hard to get really good pizza here. So I sort of have two locations. But Fratelli's is a great place to go to, and again, great food. And then the name of the place is escaping me, but it's right on the corner of where the shopping center is, just on the other side of 295. Begins with a V. I'll remember it at some point after this is over, but that's the closest pizza I can get to what we had in the New York, New Jersey area.
Where is it?
It's the shopping center where there's a number of stores in it. It's just on the other side of 395. There's the Total Wine. There's the Giant, and but I can't remember the name of it. But right on the corner next to the Arby's, it's not Pisano's, but it's a very, very, very good restaurant. But the 30 and 35 will take you to the Fratelli's, recommended highly, and there's a number of buses that service that area as well. Valentino's, that's it. Thank you.
Jesse can tell you about all the pizza.
It's good to know about good pizza on the West End.
That's
Just
about the
say, yeah.
closest we can come up with what I would call real pizza.
Oh, that's excellent. All right, Kirsten, we'll come back to you. We're going to let you go last. So I will go with the Prevention of Blindness thrift store at 900 King Street. It is run by a nonprofit organization, the Prevention of Blindness, which screens kids and adults for vision loss and glaucoma, and provides eyeglasses and care for people who are losing their vision, low income. And one of the ways they fundraise is they have two thrift stores. One is in Alexandria at King and South Alfred, and the others in Kensington, Maryland, kind of in their antique village. And I have been shopping there for over 20 years, and I have a lot of housewares. I have a few pieces of art. I have some clothing that's there. I was actually trying to remember. I put on a shirt I thought I had bought there, and actually I'd gotten it at the Twig thrift store, so I didn't wear that. But that was gonna be my visual aid tonight. It over the years has definitely grown in popularity, as I think thrifting has in general become something people are looking for for those sort of vintage items. When I first moved here, you could go there and it really, the store wasn't very well organized or curated. So if you were patient and dug through bins, you could find great things that had been there for months that people hadn't seen. Now they really lay out the store very well, and it gets, especially on the weekends, huge crowds. So items, either the good items go very quickly, or I had one friend who does a lot of reselling on eBay and said, I don't really buy there because they already are do their research, they're pricing things as to what I would be able to resell it for. But nonetheless, because we have people with very, in this area, very eclectic decorating tastes, you can find a lot of really, really cool stuff. And I just always am interested in kind of the story of things that are used, and so it's a fun place to go, and the staff is very friendly too. So that their store at the corner of King and South Alfred is served by the 30, 31 and the King Street trolley, but you have to walk 1 block in either direction to get a bus stop. All right. Just
my wife knows that thrift store well and spends a lot of time in there, as the objects in my home attest. So if I went by Praveen standards of local business that I spend the most money at, I think the runaway winner would be the Alexandria Soccer Association if I look at my bank account. But the business that I'll pick for this and to
Most transactions.
most transactions, not dollar figure. Okay. And Gustav's, I think, would also be a leading contender given how often I have meetings there. But I'm going to go with the Department of Beer and Wine, which is a beer and wine shop in Alexandria, in Delray. They are guys that worked for a long time at a really well-known store in Fairfax and split off on their own to open their own shop. And they just do a great job curating the beer selection, the wine selection. They bring in a lot of kind of like nice, sort of fine foods and stuff. But from a transit perspective, they used to be in Potomac Yard, right near the Metroway. So they're actually served by the Glebe Metroway stop, but they have just relocated to Mount Vernon Avenue. So now they're served by the 10A, 10B, and the 33, like all of the other Delray businesses that have been mentioned. And in terms of engaging the community, I think like many Delray businesses, they contribute to gift baskets for fundraisers at the elementary school and local sports leagues. And have sort of really the employees that they have there have been there for a long time. They're really dedicated. So I think it's a great example of the kind of businesses that people really like in this community.
Beth, did you want
Well, it's really hard to choose because there's so many great places to shop and restaurants. But probably my favorite is Fontaine Restaurant. Yeah, it's like on the corner of, what is it, Royal and King Street. And yeah, they've got a lot of local, fresh ingredients. And they use like 100% pure olive oil, which is unusual for a restaurant. And let's see, you can get there on line 30, 31, or from Old Town or North Old Town, line 34.
And the trolley.
And the trolley, of course, the trolley.
All right, Kirsten.
Okay, well, with apologies to my husband, who is a small business owner, I'm not going to pick his business, even though it's fabulous. He's a photographer, so if you wanted to, you could take the 30, I guess, to our house.
Well, I did say it had to have a physical location, so
Yeah,
I think you're
that's
okay.
a failing location. So yes, so I'm going to exclude him on that basis, not on quality concerns. And then I'm going to completely cheat and represent the West End. If we go by Praveen's metrics, I think I definitely have to go with Port City. It's in my neighborhood, accessible by the 30 at like to getting off at Early or Gordon and walking down. It does a lot for the community in terms of like offering space and amenities and events. It also offers, a very important service to this entire side of town in terms of parents being able to keep their sanity, letting their kids run around while we catch up with friends. But I'm also going to pick another one, which is less like a business and more a cluster of business, and go with the entirety of Van Dorn Station, because it's impossible to pick. It's got the best restaurants in the city, I think, several Ethiopian restaurants, a good Thai place, just like anything you could want. It's got an LA Mart, which is, I think, one of the best local, small run, family run grocery store chains. It's like also accessible by the line 30. And it's like, you can run into anybody you want, like on the West End. Chances are you're going to run into them at Van Dorn Station, because you can go over there and get like the best food, get your groceries, get your nails done. It's the greatest little small development, I think, in the city.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you, everybody, for your participation. I'm sorry we won't get to hear from our colleagues who aren't with us tonight, but I got some very good ideas and places that I need to check out. Kind of moving on in the chair's report, I want to take a moment to recognize a board member who is leaving us very shortly, and that's our friend Steve Kleist, who served as our vice chair. And so, Steve, we have some gifts for you, but I wanted to also share a little bit about your service on the board. So Steve came to this board in 2014. The city had changed our bylaws to require that we appoint for the first time ever a citizen member who was a transportation expert. And they'd done that the year before, and the agreement was next time we recruited, that's what we would do. And so Steve has filled that slot ever since we have had to have that requirement. And we were very lucky to get you because you had moved here from New Jersey Transit, where you had a long career working in safety. And I remember back then the whole board used to interview candidates for the board. So you sat with all of us who were on the board, and I remember being very impressed with your background and just thinking, wow, we have, really, we're lucky to have people who move to the city who want to give back, because you had taken a senior executive job at National Transportation Safety Board, and I don't think had a tremendous amount of free time, but we're willing to help us to make Dash a great system. You were riding Dash already, living in Cameron Station, and so we were delighted to appoint you. We also, and some of you who have done board recruiting or maybe been subject to this themselves, we always ask occasionally a new board member say, you're the Transportation Commission person. And that was what we did when you joined, because Carrie Donnelly was ready to stop doing that. And you took that with aplomb, and not only went on to serve on the Transportation Commission, you chaired the Transportation Commission for several years. And you also, I recollect that you then went on to be involved with at least two of their subgroups, and the ones that come to mind are the Motor Coach Task Force.
The Motor Coach Task Force, the only group to successfully have an outcome that was agreed to by all parties.
Wow. Okay.
Claim to fame.
And the scooter, were you not also on the scooter? Did not have a consensus agreed to?
It was the next best step forward. So there really wasn't the Motor Coach Task Force was an interesting group because you had the business entities that were really looking to bring motor coaches in, and then you had community members that would prefer none of them at the city. So rely on a lot of team building skills. Oh, I'm sorry. A lot of team building skills, a lot of negotiation skills, but we actually reached consensus, which I think is still in effect today. But there was an accomplishment, and we got there.
Yeah. Well, and I remember, I think 6 years on the Transportation
Yes, it was 6
Commission.
years.
So we very fortunate, and the city is very fortunate to have had that. In addition, you also, Josh alluded to this, and I think for staff in this room, the most important thing that you contributed here was being on that committee that recruited Josh to come to Dash. And you're actually the last of the members who were on that committee who were involved in that selection. And
Seems
so
like only yesterday.
that's a great legacy. And you also helped us create the performance standards that we used when we were looking to change our performance management system, because we have an employee we supervise. You said, well, here's how we do this in the federal government, the senior executive service, and that served us very well through multiple cycles and made what was a very convoluted process and form a whole lot easier. And so we're very grateful for the contributions that you made. I know, Steve, in the last couple of years, for those who haven't seen Steve or gotten to know him as well, you've took a new job that required a lot of often last minute travel and to time zones that weren't necessarily compatible with our meetings. And so I know that you struggled a little bit with, should I stay involved? And I said, Steve, you contribute so much, and we want, to have you for as long as you're able and willing to stay in the city. But now there's a pull to Texas with grandchildren, and you're going to have a wonderful life there. So, but we wanted you to have something to show them, to remember us by. And so we hope you'll have an office there. And so we have two gifts for you. Last month, well, let me first say, last month we handed out a magazine article that actually had Josh on its front cover, and Hillary, I think, had asked if we were going to frame it, and that was going to be the gift. We did frame something, but we chose not to. Although if you'd like to have Josh on your, so we have a certificate of appreciation to you for a 11 years. And I think this is, well, wait, the other one's more impressive. This is the one you're going to want to show your grandkids.
Oh,
So,
no.
do you have one of these?
No, I don't.
Oh,
But
excellent.
they'll love
So
it.
you're going to, show them, I think 1/84th of a dash bus. So,
My job will be preventing my oldest one to take it out to start playing with it.
Josh has extras.
I have extras, yeah. Do you want to stand together? I'll take a
yeah.
picture, both of you. Oh, hold it. There you go. Both of them. Yeah, both of them. Yeah. All right, ready? All right, thanks.
Maybe do a picture with the whole board, so that way
Oh, that'd be
Steve can
great,
have that
yeah.
to remember.
While you're forming, I've seen
Formation.
quite a bit of transformation for this board since I got here in 2014. We have really developed as an agency considerably, absolute upward trajectory. It was as a result of a lot of hard work of the staff that's here, and I'll say guidance by the various board members that we've had here. But I would also say you will not know the value that David brings as the chairperson until he's gone. So appreciate the fine work that he does, please. The dedication that he has, but he is really, really an outstanding contributor to what made this agency what it is today, and will continue to work there. So whoever fills his shoes will have a tough job. But David, I want to thank you for your leadership while I was here. I sort of transitioned about halfway through my term on the board, but really it's been remarkable the support that you've been able to garner from the city to help us as the board, to keep us, and the agency for that matter, to get us where we are today.
Thank you so much.
But it was a pleasure working with you all, and I feel bad. I think I mentioned in one meeting, these last 6 months or so were a bit challenging because of both domestic and international travel that I've been doing for the job. But I'm really struggling with trying to be an active participant now, and I think I just have to say enough is enough. It's been a good run, but I really appreciate working with you all, and hope that everything continues to move in the same trajectory. So thank you.
Well said. Obviously, Jesse's got to be in the back. Yeah, right here. That's fine. There you go. Don't worry, you won't block Jesse. You don't have to worry about that. He's like me in all the pictures. Josh, oh. Yeah, that's all. Cheers, everybody. 3, 2, 1. All right, thank you.
I'm not quite leaving yet. I have an agency to keep going right now. That last meeting didn't go very well for us, but we shall prevail. I'm convinced of it.
Well, Steve, I always tell all of our departing staff members, you're always a part of the Dash family, so you're always welcome back. We even have a job for you if you ever give us a call. But thank you for your service. Yeah.
Thank you, Steve, for your kind words and your dedication to Dash. The city is lucky to have people like you who come here and want to be a part of making things that they know about work better and giving generously of their time. We will miss you greatly. So. I wanted also to mention, just to close out the chair's report, we had 2 wonderful events that have occurred in the last month, and one was a ribbon cutting on 60-foot buses that we acquired from NBTC, and Praveen was there along with Ajayesha and a lot of city staff and a lot of dignitaries. The mayor spoke, Kate Mattice from NBTC spoke, and Josh spoke, and the buses looked beautiful. Senator Eben was there, and a number of our DAC members were there, and it was just a wonderful event to celebrate. Moved inside at the last minute, but it was a wonderful event to celebrate just how we're working through capacity issues and getting where we can buses that meet our clean, sustainable standard. To be all electric. So thank you for organizing a wonderful event. And I also wanted to mention that Ajayesha and I represented the board at the World Pride, which Dash organized, had a wonderful, if you haven't seen it around the city, a beautifully wrapped bus in the rainbow theme that brings in elements of the city. And Josh, I hope in your report you'll talk more about it, but I just want to say, I didn't know kind of what, I wanted to be there to support the team, and I didn't know what to expect, but it far exceeded just my expectations for the day. And I tell you, walking around with that bus through that crowd, there was a tremendous amount of love. You felt like people were, I mean, I imagine helped by a lot of libations that people had enjoyed, but you felt a lot of love from people for Dash. And I think they were very proud that Alexandria was represented. And so it was really my pleasure to be a part of it. And I thank everyone who helped to make that event possible. It was a wonderful way to show up. And also, I know we provided some cooling. I saw our cooling buses at the end of the route, and which was much needed for people who didn't have the protection we did inside an air-conditioned bus for the hours that we were waiting. So we were very comfortable, and actually I think got a lot of new fans of Dash because they invited basically everybody in the surrounding units to come sit on our bus and made new friends while we were there. So thank you for letting me be part of it. It was a very moving event. With that, I'll turn over to Hillary for the TNS report.
Thank you for the muffins, delicious.
You can take one home with you too.
Okay, just a few things to report on. The city kicked off the West Alexandria Transit Center. We have an architecture firm on board to help us with the design, and we're going to be kicking off more meetings with stakeholders to kind of get a better understanding of the vision for that corridor. If you've been out near Landmark, some of the infrastructure is already in place now in terms of like the street sections. And I was up on the parking deck looking down, and you could see the concrete street for the where the transit center is going to go. So that's exciting, and I think it'll be just a really neat and we want this design to represent Alexandria, but just be a kind of a unique place, not just bus shelters on the street. We want to that's why we brought an architect on instead of just going straight to an engineering firm, so that we can design a place where it fits in with the kind of the stitched into the fabric of the old Landmark site. I can't call it the West End. I'm struggling with the West End site. So we're excited to kick that off. We also, our team had a meeting to look at King Street in front of the high school. So we've been partnering with Alexandria City High School, where we have Dash bus stops there. We have a lot of students that ride those buses, but we also have, there's 2 lanes in front of the high school, and a lot of the parents use one of the lane for drop off. So we're looking at how do we make that more accessible so the buses can get in, so people that are biking or walking are safe, and that people aren't stopping right in front of the high school. So there's some design options out, and I believe the public input period it is still open on that, and there's an online form if people want to provide input.
Can I ask a question on that one, Hillary? I actually,
sure.
Thanks to your report, I actually took the survey because I go to Chinkopin a lot, so I'm using the bus stops and crossing at Kenwood frequently. I wasn't sure. It mentioned consolidation of bus stops, but at least in the immediate study area, there's only one bus stop anyway that's there. And so I wasn't sure what bus stops. It wasn't clear what bus stops they were eliminating because they may have been outside the maps that showed the options.
Yeah, outside of the maps, we're considering, we're looking at the stop that's before Kenwood and after Kenwood to see where could we, with so many students riding the bus, where do we have the most space to have kind of more ADA accessible area and more space for students waiting. So that's just something we're evaluating.
Oh, okay.
Nothing's been decided on that yet.
Okay, because I wrote a
So
comment that said I couldn't judge because I couldn't see what they
Right.
were. I could see where the stops were and how the buses would pull over, but so the one stop in the study area, but
Yeah, and we've gotten community feedback that we should look the stop that's closer to Chinkopin as well. So I think, we'll get the feedback and then we'll see where we go from there and work with the Dash team on what that looks like. I can't remember if I mentioned this. It was not in my notes last time, but I don't know if I mentioned the trip fare free program for Metrobus that the city was awarded that. So we're working with the schools to figure out how quickly we can get that launched. Very exciting data to come out of that, I think, with seeing how students are using the bus to get to school, but also jobs and after school. There was also another kickoff for the Envision Route 7 bus rapid transit project. This is an MBTC project, and it kind of mirrors the 28, but it's a bus route that goes from Tyson's, and they have it currently ending in Alexandria, either at the Mark Center or Southern Tower. So that's part of something we're looking at. We're going to be diving into a deeper analysis for the kind of the last segment in the part that's in Alexandria of what that looks like. I mean, we've envisioned that it would use West End Transitway stops, but I think figuring out, does it go to Mark Center, does it go to Southern Towers, or does it go to both, is something that we still need to figure out as we look at kind of who is going to be riding this route and who benefits from that, and then how we connect to some of our other BRT routes. I think that was all I had. I do want to mention that tonight, right now, VDOT is hosting an open house on the 495 Express Lanes project. The city wrote a letter, the mayor wrote a letter. Right now, they're proposing adding 2 additional lanes in each direction for express lanes. So we have some concerns about kind of the timing and the analysis they had done for traffic and our interchanges in the city and how that impacts us. They have shown on the plans that they would leave space for future transit should Metro be expanded and kind of come down that 495 corridor, but they are having a public meeting tonight and kind of just showing people what their preferred alternative is. So we will see how that goes. The feedback we've heard so far has not been super positive in support of adding additional lanes to the highway. That's it.
There was a letter in the packet related to a grant that the city is pursuing for, I think, senior and disabled.
Was that a separate item in the agenda, or?
It's tucked under your report. So.
Oh, it is under my report. Okay. So the city is pursuing an enhanced mobility grant, and this would be to fund new vehicles to support our paratransit program. Right now, the city contracts out all of our operational services, but we've been looking at some other cities and the models that they have done where they actually purchase the vehicles and they lease them back to the companies. And so this would get more wheelchair accessible vehicles into our fleet, where we get a revenue stream. We're getting, if we get the grant, we're getting them at basically an 80% discount because 80% of the cost is covered through the grant. And so we haven't applied. This is the same grant. I believe the last time we applied for this grant was when we built the bus bulbs along Pendleton with this funding. So we haven't applied for it in a while, but we, as we look at our paratransit program and try and figure out how to make it more efficient and modernize it, having additional wheelchair accessible vehicles in the fleet will be helpful for the on-time performance of the operator. So it's something we're going after, and we are asking Dash to support that grant, or the board to support that grant with the letter.
I just wanted to ask, just because it may affect whether I can vote on this item, because I noticed the letter was addressed to the mayor and city council and not to the FTA. So is that letter asking the mayor and council to endorse the grant, or is it actually going as a letter like to say this is why this is a good
We
with the
usually
application?
attach those letters in the packet, but this one was addressed to the mayor and council, although they actually approved this last night. So I don't know how that impacts your ability to.
Okay. I think I will just, I'm going to ask Jesse. Jesse's going to run another item later on that relates to FTA funding. So I think just out of abundance of caution, I'm going to recuse and just ask Jesse to run the, okay, so.
All right, so the letter's in your packet. If anyone has not yet had a chance to review it, I'll give you another couple seconds to look at it. But once we have done that, I'll entertain a motion to approve this letter.
Might mention that we would modify the signature line according to the change to you. And Beth will get that updated before you sign it.
Praveen and Kirsten, I suspect moving and seconding is going to fall for you because we have 2 recusals and 3 city employees as the other people participating. So, okay.
Your mic's, I think, your mic's on now, so I don't know if Kirsten was able.
Oh, Kirsten, did you hear me? Oh, sorry. I should have put my mic on. You and Praveen are going to have to move and second this because the 3 city employees and the 2 feds are all refusing.
Okay, Praveen, you want to move and I'll second?
Yeah, I move to approve the letter related to the enhanced mobility.
I second.
Okay, motion made and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed and recusals. Yeah, 2 abstain, 3 recusals. Okay. Thank you, Hillary. I think that was the last item in your report, correct?
Yes, it is.
All right, great.
All right, thank you, Jesse. Was that the, anybody have questions for Hillary on other items that she went over in her report? All right, if not, we always allow space for board members who are involved with commissions or groups that are things that would be of interest for us and transit. So I'll pause now and ask if there are any updates from other members of the board. All right, hearing none, Praveen.
I just want to second what David mentioned in his report about about World Pride in DC over the weekend. I went with family. I wasn't able to go in the parade with the Dash bus, but we observed from near the end of the route. Unfortunately, we missed seeing the Dash Pride wrapped bus go by, but we saw the trolley, and we're like, the trolley's here too. Dash went big. And then my wife noticed at the end of 9th Street, she's like, there's a Dash bus. And we looked and it wasn't the Pride wrapped one. There was another Dash bus that was there as a cooling center. So it was kind of cool to like, just keep encountering Dash at that event. And the cooling center was a plus in that heat. Thank you.
Thank you, Praveen.
And Kristen has her hand up.
Oh, Kristen.
Yeah, I just wanted to flag, I was able to go to the kickoff launch meeting for the Duke land use area planning process that's kicking off with the city. So it was a great kickoff meeting. And I think, obviously transit as part of the planning process and how this particular corridor from, I'm going to call it Landmark, Hillary, I refuse to call it West End, to the Amtrak station along the Duke corridor is going to be really important for transit and Duke Street in Motion. So I just encourage any board members that have not plugged into that process to check it out.
Thanks. And I want to say, I noticed tons of signs at every bus stop along Duke Street actually coming here today. So it actually had made me think, oh, I should learn more about that project. So. All right, we'll move on to our meeting minutes. So the May meeting minutes were included in the packet. Are there any revisions to the minutes as they were submitted? If not, is there a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Moved by Jesse. Is there a second? Hillary. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Steve abstains. Okay. Meeting minutes are approved, and the financials. Just looking to see if Edward's not here, but I know Josh certainly can answer any questions. Oh, I'm sorry, you're behind Martin. I apologize. Yeah, now I see you now. So Edward is here if there are questions about the financials, but there was a written explanation in our report. All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the action items. So we have the Alexandria Transit Strategic Plan, and that will be followed by approval of the budget.
Big 10-year plan that we updated last year, and your update based on state requirements, we have to adopt that. So this is the first minor update, kind of the multi-year update for that plan. Our next major update will be the 5-year one. So went through the process the last 4 months with sharing the draft plan forward, with our outreach process, books, and revising the plan based on board, other stakeholders.
Oh, that's good. Good thing you caught it. Try it now.
Is that better? Kirsten, can you hear me? All right, there we go. So yes, we've gone through the outreach process, and we are at the point where board would consider approval. We have provided the full final plan in the packet, along with a memo that summarizes some of the major changes that have come between the last time that you saw the full document. So I will just briefly summarize those. Josh, are you controlling
Yeah.
Got it. So just taking out of the memo from your packet, this is kind of a list of some of the major changes that have been factored into the final ATSP update for FY26. First and foremost is the line 32 supplement that was awarded by City Council. Very excited about that. We've been trying to do that for a number of years, so we're able to implement improved weekday service, increasing the service from every 60 minutes, every 30 minutes for the western half of the route from Landmark. We're calling the new transit center West Alexandria Transit Center, just kind of as a rebellious thing, just to avoid confusion. But so from West Alexandria Transit Center down to Van Dorn Metro. So that area will be improved every 30 minutes on weekdays. Beyond that, we've got our Commuter Choice Awards. We have been recommended for funding for that. The CTP will be approving them in a week, I think next week. So we're continuing service on the 35 and 36, including a slight increase in the 35 peak service. There'll be an extra trip per hour in the peak direction. So we'll be actually running that route every 8 to 10 minutes instead of just every 10 minutes during the peaks. So that will hopefully help out with some of the crowding that we've seen with that popular route. We talked about some of these other ones last month, but the 34 extension to Arlandria, that's not for FY26. That'll be in a future year, but that was kind of the outcome of the Arlandria service study that we did at the request of the board and City Council. So staff is recommending the extension of the 34 Farm Potomac Yard to Arlandria via Reed and Mount Vernon Avenue. However, at the request of the board last month, actually the month before that, we did include some additional information about the process that we need to go through to make that happen. There are some additional hurdles in terms of public outreach, especially along Reed Avenue, because if we're modifying the Reed Richmond Highway intersection to allow vehicles, hopefully just buses, but maybe more vehicles through on Reed Avenue, certainly there might be some community input that we would need to collect for that. So there's a process for that where we have to go through outreach and then get approval from the TPB, the Traffic and Parking Board, if we were to do that. We're also continuing to discuss with Arlington about this proposal because it would require the buses to go slightly into Arlington and cross the bridge to turn around and connect to the Arlington Ridge Shopping Center. So that's the 34. I mentioned that we're trying to, at the request, actually, Hillary had brought this up a couple of meetings back, but we wanted to take another look at the 2030 ATV to make sure that is still reflective of the latest and greatest plan. There have been some tweaks based on the West End Transitway, the 34 extension, and some other things that we need to make sure they're incorporated. So as part of next year's ATSP update, we will be updating the 2030 map for the ATV as well. And then lastly, we've also, as part of our scheduling process, getting ready for FY26, we're planning to implement the FY26, the first round of FY26 improvements in August. So August 24th, we'll have a big service change. As part of our current service budget, we were provided some additional resources to address some ongoing reliability and crowding issues that we're seeing, kind of just to maintain, not to add service, but just to maintain current service levels with better reliability and less crowding. So we will be implementing the first batch of those improvements in August. You can see the lines that we're hoping to address. I think the one thing I did want to call out is that with line 34, line 34 is a very challenging route. It doesn't cycle very well, so we often don't have very much layover. And then if it falls behind schedule, it falls apart very easily. So that was one of the routes that we wanted to address for this reliability improvement effort. With the additional resources that we're putting on that route for Sundays in particular, we're able to actually run an extra trip per hour, which allows us to run 30-minute service on Sundays, which is a goal that we've had for a number of years now. So we're going to be able to do that in August, thankfully, and that will be implemented August 24th. So I'm excited to report that. And then we've got some more improvements planned for February. Those will be more substantial, as we'll have some additional buses that we can use at that point as well to address some peak reliability concerns, which are where we see our biggest challenges with reliability. Next slide, please.
Hey, Martin, can I ask you a question? I'm very pleased about the line 34 changes, but how are we doing that in a revenue neutral way?
Yes, so the additional resources that we're using to address the reliability issues on line 34 have given us an extra bus, actually bus and a half, that we're able to use to run those extra trips. So it's a cost, it's been from a standpoint of what our current services were, it's cost neutral. So it's basically a scheduling efficiency that we've been able to find as part of the buildup to our schedule change.
So coming from other parts of the system, that bus and a half.
Correct.
Okay. Same number of operators out on the road.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay, so this is the process we've gone through. As I mentioned, we started back in March. We brought the draft to the board. We've gone through all this, and now we're here to June 11th. So we are seeking board consideration for approval of the ATSP. And then, as I mentioned, August 24th is when we would start with some of the service changes that we are doing out of this. So happy to take any questions or feedback.
Questions for Mark?
Yeah, I've got one question, Martin. In the memo, it references schedule adjustments to 36A and B. Maybe I missed it in the full plan, but in the table 3.1, it notes no improvements planned for 36A and B. Are those somewhere else in the plan, or what's the?
Table 3.1, is that the one that goes route by route?
Yeah.
For the next 10 years?
Am I looking at the wrong place? to
No,
learn what
that
those-
table
okay.
is showing kind of service level improvements. Technically the hours are going up for that route, but the reliability improvements are kind of spread across the system. So that table attempts to show kind of for future years, if we're going from 30 to 15 minutes on a route, what is that costing us? So yeah, it doesn't translate directly to that table, unfortunately. But there are hours that are being applied to the 36, and the schedule won't the service levels won't change. It's just like the running time and the blocking and run cutting behind the scenes. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, got it. Thanks. And then on the 34 extension into Alexandria, it talks about how that area could benefit from fair access to fare-free dash service. I guess if in fair terms things were equal between WMATA and Dash, do you think you would still propose that? Because it's just in terms of service, it seems really duplicative of the 10A, 10B, or whatever that'll be called. Service, and the main difference is expanding fare-free access.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a good question. I think there is value, I think, in terms of the connection it provides from Alexandria to Potomac Yard, for example. So that is a new connection. I think one of the main reasons that Alexandria was raised in the first place, though, was because it did not have access to fare-free service the same way that other parts of the community do. So I think where that shakes out is how we prioritize this improvement compared to other commitments that we want to make. So in future years, if there's a discussion about yes, we want to help Alexandria provide the service, but there's also the other needs we need to stack it up against. So that doesn't directly answer your question, but I think it's kind of a value thing. So that's up for the board to consider in future years.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, if not, is there a motion to adopt the Alexandria Transit Strategic Plan update?
So moved.
Moved by Jesse, second Steve. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. All right, thank you. We move on to approval of the budget.
Mr. Chair, we'll just offer if there are any questions. The budget has been discussed in multiple meetings throughout the fall and spring. No changes from the last update you received, and you've also received your public input on the budget, and aligns also with the ATSP and incorporates the additional investment that City Council has made.
Thank you, Josh. Is there a motion to approve the budget?
Motion to approve the budget as presented.
Moved by Steve. Is there a second? Anyone?
Second.
Second, Jesse. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, passes unanimously. Next, we have the DMV Moves Task Force letter, and we have a draft that was prepared by Josh and that I provided some input on. I did, just before we get into the discussion of this, just because this may come up over the summer, what we were trying to do in May to react to the potential of a letter being sent that would suggest that local systems should be consolidated into WMATA. We were using our kind of expedited correspondence procedure, a policy that we adopted last fall, which states that when the board is unable to convene but action is needed, typically a letter, then the board has a process where the general manager and the chair would consult, and then if it's agreed that we should pursue this, a draft is prepared and then circulated to members of the board for your changes. And then if you can either say, yes, I like it the way it is, or I want to consider these edits, or no, I don't think we should weigh in or send this letter, or I think we should do something different. And then if there's feedback from the board, then the chair and vice chair would convene in order to review that and to make any final changes. And, you know, with the idea that we would be very deferential to other board members, especially in their kind of areas of expertise in making those decisions. That's what we were trying to do. We realized we didn't need to do that because the letter we were trying to influence people not to sign had already been signed by the time we were trying to weigh in on it. But since we had envisioned this would likely come up in the summer, since we take a 3-month recess, I just wanted to remind folks of that process, because it's possible that that could be used over the summer, and you know, any requests for action would come with a very clear deadline as to when you need to provide your feedback if you have changes. So, and as I noticed, it's our board policies are inboardable, so if you want to reference it, you can actually pull up the policy that we passed in that section. So Josh, I'll turn over to you for the discussion.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. The revised letter, of course, is included in boardable in your packets. A little bit of background on this. This did pop up suddenly, but it is not anything new. In fact, over the years, this has come up apparently quite regularly. But basically, this stems from a letter that was penned by Jennifer Carroll Foy and co-signed by a number of colleagues of hers to the DMV Moves Task Force, essentially trying to instruct the task force to provide a recommendation or pursue incorporating all separate transit systems under WMATA. And obviously, for a plethora of reasons, that's a terrible idea and something that nobody supports here or locally, including city council, city manager's office. So we wanted to get out ahead of that and provide a response to DMV Moves. I serve on the DMV Moves task force. I'm on the Government Partners Advisory Board, and a bunch of my team members serve on various committees. I'll just summarize by saying I think DMV Moves is a good conversation and something that we should be having, and it's an opportunity to try to find ways to do things better and work better together, but it is not designed to consolidate all the transit systems. We're not back in 1960, 1970 when that was done and tried before and it didn't work. In fact, I've been very vocal in explaining to people we don't need to go back and try to rehash the past. I think we need to recognize how successful we are today. So I also would just update the board that it appears, although it hasn't been confirmed fully yet, it's on the calendar, at least I think for Tuesday, there was an email exchange. The city has also sent some communications. And then also Senator Scott Soroville, so yeah, I don't know how to pronounce his name, has been quite vocal about this as well. And so we do have an audience with him. I'm going to be on a meeting with him on Tuesday and have a conversation with him around this. But ultimately, I think that the letter, if you all are willing to approve it, I think is a great message and a good something to have in as documentation of how important local service is to our local communities throughout Northern Virginia and honestly also in Maryland.
Comments on the letter?
Josh, I think it's a really strong letter. I've had the chance to look over it a couple of times. I'm glad that we're getting our voice on the record in this manner. And like you said, I think it's like, I think we can acknowledge the reasons that they may have written that and also still voice our own position. I think the only thing I would ask is, obviously, we should be independent and speak on what we think it's important to speak in, but it also doesn't hurt to stay coordinated with the city. So has Sarah Taylor had the chance to just sort of like see this, get a sense of how we're messaging it?
Yeah, so Sarah Taylor and I have had several conversations about this, so she's very aligned and she agreed that sending something like this in is important. And we'll of course share a copy upon approval with the city for their records.
Great, thank you.
Any other comments, Brittany?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. And I agree, David, with the letter. I think, you know, this was a good prompt to think about of all the operational and planning challenges ahead of DASH, which ones may benefit from, you know, additional collaborators and, you know, learning from other jurisdictions. So I'm glad in the on the last page of the letter in the bullets, workforce development seems like a clear one where we could benefit from, you know, working with other localities, as well as I'm glad there's a bullet there on the investments in clean fleets, because I think the supply chain and financing challenges and that fleet transition is also something where we could benefit from, not just from learning where others are finding successes, but also sharing our own successes to kind of increase the multiple of our impact across the region. And finally, it says we welcome continued collaboration with our regional partners. And Josh, I would really encourage you and the team to exemplify that, so that when this inevitably comes up again, Dash is like a shining example of leading collaboration. So we can, really point to how it's beneficial to us and to others, and how that benefit can be reaped without consolidation.
Thank you for that. And I just want to give a nod to my team. There's a lot of collaboration that does go on, I think, behind the scenes. And so while a lot of this is politicized, and we certainly can understand the reasons that might happen, I appreciate your comment. We'll continue to prioritize those collaborations in all those places.
Make a motion to approve the letter for submission.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Praveen. Is there further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, passes unanimously. I'm going to turn the gavel back over to Jesse now for the next item, as I am recused. Steve, are you also going to recuse from this item? So I'm going to stay in the room. I'm going to go in the audience, so it's clear I'm not participating in this discussion.
Okay, thank you, David. All right, so the next item up is this application supporting, a resolution in support of our application for the Lono grant. There are details in your packet, including a letter from Ray that's kind of outlining what we would do with the money if we receive it, and then also a copy of the resolution itself. Josh, what other details would be important to share related to this item?
Thank you. So just some context behind this, and a little bit, if it's okay with you, I'm gonna go a little bit out of order and also mention the item that's sort of towards the end of the agenda, which is related to the September joint strategic retreat, planning retreat, whatever we might end up calling it, with City Council and the City Manager's Office. So a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one is that work we do in September, I envision that really being a conversation around policy and what the goals are of all the joint bodies, and making sure that we're still aligned, that we're following them, that they are things that are funded and attainable, or if they're not, what are the priorities around how we get there. I want to recognize and restate my continued dedication to moving to a zero emission fleet. I think it's been pretty clear throughout the years that that is something that I see as our future. So this does not change that. The goalpost is not intended to be changing with this conversation or this application. Rather, that this is very much a timing issue relative to the administration's notice of funding opportunity, which is also something that has been very clearly stated by the city is, and the priority of the city is to go for and apply for any and all available grants and funding that might be out there, no matter how much of a stretch or reach they might feel like. It's important to put our best foot forward and try the very best to obtain those funds. So I've asked Raymond here to just provide you all some insight into what he's been hearing. He's collaborated a lot with Hillary and Hillary's team, as well as the city's team, who's pursuing grants, as well as a variety of other sources that he's much more eloquent at explaining than I am. But I just wanted to introduce this and say that for the record, that my intention is that this is something that we need to make sure is addressed in that strategic work session, so that we make sure we know where we're going for our 2037 goal, or if that is going to change, what does that look like? And the bodies need to be the ones that make that decision, not staff. So I'll turn it over to Ray to provide more summary answer questions.
Thank you, Josh. Raymond Mui, Chief Infrastructure and Development Officer. Just a little bit about this program. We are surprised that the NOFO came out. It did come out surprisingly, at a very odd time, at a very challenging time, but nonetheless, they came out. It did come out. The administration is obligated by law to cycle 2 more years of this program at the funding levels that it was pending at. And so the funding level for the program this year, there's 2 halves of the program. One half of the program is the bus and bus facilities program. That is intended for steady good repair for both facilities and or buses. Think crumbling buildings, think bridges and et cetera, stuff like that, very old buses. And then the other half of the program, the low or no emissions part of the program, again, pending by law, is funded at the level of 1.1 billion, which historically has typically funded projects to help transit agencies or jurisdictions reduce and minimize their carbon footprint by transitioning their fleet and or infrastructure supporting fleet to low or no emissions technology. The NOFO is very similar to how it came out the last couple of years, where the 2 programs are married together, which creates both an opportunity and also a challenge for us. And in years past, we have always combined our facility needs and our rolling stock needs together and apply for the program. And we kind of sort of allow the FTA to be able to use their judgment on which program to fund, which half of the, which portions of the project with. Typically with success, we've secured $28 million worth of program funding in FY23 this way. So this year we have three main project components that are semi-related, but they are distinctly different. First and foremost, our most critical need is for a project to rehabilitate and refurbish the dash facility. The spotlight component of that is to refurbish the roof deck. We have secured $3 million of city local money for the project. We have since found out that $3 million is far from enough to complete the project. It's going to cost closer to $12 million or up. We have since gone out to the state and pursued state funding, in which we are looking very successful in. So we have up to $4.7 million of state merit funding, which will augment that money. And we are turning to low, no, and bus facilities to complete the funding gap for that project, to complete to bring us the rest of the way to $12 million, and ideally even displace the state and the local share of the funding for that project. Second component of the project is our FY26 replacement buses. We have up to 12 buses that are due for replacement in fiscal year FY26. Our bus replacement needs in the next 2 years are that amount for FY26 and 14 buses in FY27. And actually, let me offer some clarification. And the CIP is actually funded for 7 buses in FY26, but we do have some additional surplus buses that we can use to our advantage in the loan application to gain competitiveness. And third would be the opportunity to convert either one or both halves of the project to directly support low and or no emissions technology. And there's a couple of different ways we can do that, but we decided to put that out on the table as as an idea for this board to react to, provide guidance on. And we have an internal team that composed of a deep number of dash staff, city staff, and external consultants, TFG, Becker Group, and we have CTE who helps us as well, who helps us strategize internally and help us determine what exactly is our best bet of securing a winning award for this program or any other program, as well as meeting our priorities as we pen them out. So that's the short answer to the opportunity that's before us. And I will add, as I've broken down, that there's 2 halves of the program. The program that is lesser funded is bus and bus facilities. That is at $400 million. The program that is higher funded is the LONA program, which is $1.1 billion. This year, there is a strong disclosure in plain English from the administration that says on the top of the NOFO and then on the cover page, it says this administration intends to fund as many low emissions projects over no emissions projects to the greatest extent allowable by law. It is out there. It is in plain English. And it's out there for us to consider and perhaps use as guidance as we determine how we group the projects together, how we put it forward, how we put forward a project proposal, and how do we best leverage this opportunity to pursue our goals of zero emissions while also pursuing our obligation to maintain city good repair.
Ray, you mentioned that we have replacement buses programmed already in the CIP for FY 26 and 27. My understanding in talking with you is that the city has funded those as diesels only.
That's correct.
Is that right?
Yep. I've said
So, and you and I had a discussion about this previously. The opportunity is potentially to find a way to get the delta to convert those, convert them, or maybe get enough money potentially to, one of the questions I asked Ray was, is there the opportunity to flip it and get money from FTA potentially for a low emission propulsion, and then leverage some of the local money to get over to the hump to electric. So that was sort of some of the creativities that we talked about. But I would again also mention to the board that we don't ever typically want to drop something on the table and say we got to do it right now, but this is where we were put as a result of the administration's process with this. So
I'll also add, our state of good repair needs for FY 26, FY 27, are you familiar with this, is 6 buses of FY 26, 14 in FY 27. We went from a place where we were off balance as far as funding for that. And the city has funded replacements for those buses 1 for 1, but every single one of those dollars is for diesels only. There's not a single dollar for anything beyond diesel. And I will call out the number 6 in FY 26 because 6 is all we need is in our 6 is what we really need in a program to maintain a city good repair, but we have opportunities to apply for and replace buses up to the number 12, get a head start in FY 26, which would then help displace and offload some of the pressure on FY 27 or beyond, giving us potential future opportunity to explore other means or at least relieve the pressure on FY 27 for us to consider what we can do to otherwise move towards our goal of towards zero emissions.
For questions?
Yeah.
I just have 2 questions on this. One, do we have understanding of, I guess, what an award would look like? Would it be, here's $10 million specifically just for your facility repair, or do we see it more as, let's just give a dollar amount and then we have some discretion to, of using it for, you've given us a prioritized list.
Yep.
So like, let's say we get 15 million,
Mhm.
would we do all of number 1 and bite into number 2, or will it be more prescriptive than that?
It would be a little bit more prescriptive than that, but still some leeway. So we apply for a facility component and a bus component, and they decide to fund facility and not the buses. They can do that and provide a dollar amount. They can do the vice versa. They can do a combination, partial facility plus partial buses. They do very aggressively look at consider scaling. So we do give them packages of scenarios which they can consider and take any packaged scaled options. They've also been known to just scale outside of that. If we ask for 5, 10, or 15 buses, it's very possible they could come back and say, we'll offer you 7. Will you take that?
Okay, that's helpful. And then my second question was, you referenced that we're due for 6 replacements in 26, but we're going to put forward up to 12. I know we run into some requirements with FTA about making sure we're replacing at 12 years, an average of 12 years.
Yep.
Does that work both ways? So is there, by front loading replacements, is there an issue there? Or is it just a ceiling of 12 years? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, the 12 is the minimum.
The minimum.
12 is the minimum. Typically, when we put forward buses that are 12, 13 years old to be replaced, they actually don't score that well because other agencies are putting forward 18, 20-year-old buses. The way we're able to move from 6 to 12 is because we have a handful of surplus buses from this Blue Line shuttle that are now reached 25 years of age. Got it. Yep.
Yeah, we have some contingency fleet that we were disposing of, and then we held on to them for very much the purpose of potentially leveraging them in this application.
So Thanks, Ray. The thing I just want to make sure that everyone on the board understands, which I hope you do, because we just approved a letter that references it, that Dash is transitioning to a 100% zero emission fleet, and the city target for that is by 2037. So, to meet that target, let's all think about, if you have a 12-year life, when does that mean 12 years before 2037? When do you need to start buying all electric? It's right now. And, the letters that we approved actually said, with all new bus purchases from 27 onward having zero emissions. Okay. So, maybe we get ahead of things and have a much newer fleet by then. My point here is, at some point, we have to cut over to only electric purchases to meet the policy. That's just how the math works. And the policy can be changed, but right now it's been adopted by council. It's been adopted by the board and the board's strategic plan. It's been reinforced dozens of times. So for Dash to take actions that will clearly put us in a position to not meet the policy, this has to be resolved somehow. And I appreciate Josh bringing up the session with council in September. I think that would be the moment to kind of bring everyone together, council, us as a board, the city manager, get everyone on the same page about what's the policy, do we have a plan to meet it, how's that going to work, does it need to change? Because if people are not committed to that policy, then let's get that on the record. Let's find out who's committed, who's not. At the moment, it is the policy, so we're all committed to it. And what I would like to see in September from the team is, what's the plan to meet it? Or we've looked at it every way we can and it's impossible. Recommend to council to change it. Recommend to the board to change it. But we can't live in a world where that's our goal and we just keep taking actions where we're clearly not going to be able to meet the goal. The other thing I want everyone to think about is, there will come a point in time where a city like Alexandria and a transit system it owns like Dash won't have a social license to operate a diesel bus in Alexandria. And so every new one that we buy, we're incurring risk on the tail end of that asset life, that it becomes stranded. And so I know there's short-term fiscal constraints, but these risks have to be considered when you make financial decisions like this. Like stranded asset risk, it's real. I know it might be someone else's problem in 2040, but ultimately that risk gets carried by Alexandria taxpayers. So I think that should be explicitly considered when we're buying new fossil fuel burning capital equipment.
Thank you, Praveen. Other discussion? Hillary?
Yeah, I mean, I think you make really good points. I think we have a lot of policies in the cities that we set forth, that we are goals and we have targets and we try and achieve them, and we certainly don't meet them. And we even, our boards and commissions and councils are taking actions that are not fully getting us to where we need to be. I think with this grant, I've worked with Ray and Josh's team, and I think we are in a fiscal climate where we need to do what we need to do to get something. And if we continue to have conversations with funders and others, and they're saying that, putting forward a fully electric plan here is not going to get you anything in this administration, then we need to think about what is it that we can get and how do we leverage those dollars. So I understand your points, but I think that from the conversations we've had, we need to be really thoughtful and strategic about how we are applying for these grants, particularly in this administration. And so, you know, I think it's okay for the board to make a recommendation on something that is not supporting fully electric, because we have continued to say that state of good repair is a priority and that we need to make sure that we're keeping up our fleet. And if that means keeping it up with diesel buses, that might be something that we have to do because we're fiscally constrained. I mean, all of these policies were not necessarily fiscally constrained. Their policies or goals, that's great, but things change in the city and how funds are coming in and what the city's priorities are. And so I think we have to be thoughtful about that. And also that state of good repair has been a long-term priority of the city and of Dash. So, everything we do and in terms of where we're spending money in the budget, we're making trade-offs, we're making service trade-offs, we're making capital trade-offs. And then frankly, when we're thinking about the electric fleet, we have electric buses that are not in operations. We are struggling with parts, we are struggling with supply, we are struggling with buses that work. And right now we're struggling with manufacturers that actually make these buses and deliver them. And so those are all things that need to go into this that, I think when was it 2019 that we last updated this? I don't know that this is where we thought we'd be in 2025 with bus manufacturers and the ability to get solid electric buses out in the, into our fleet. So I just want to kind of play the other side of that. And I think, being strategic with these grants is something that we spend a lot of time thinking about and talking to folks in the administration, folks that, kind of do this for a living and can help us figure out what our strategy is. But I would just put it out there. I don't think we're going against anything by saying as a board, we support this. And if what Josh and his team ultimately hear is that we're going to do much better with state of good repair and electric buses, just for this particular year that this is out, we were shocked that this grant even came out. Then I think that's something that we should all feel comfortable doing because the state of good repair has long been a priority.
Yeah, I want to, keep the conversation going. If we buy 12 diesel buses this year and 14 next year, we have, at least according to the plan that we just approved, a fleet where there are diesel hybrid buses going back to 2011 on the road, right? So play that then forward with 2027 purchases that are then on the road in 2041. So really my request for September, Josh, is, for us to be honest about where we're tracking relative to this policy and be clear with the council that we're not going to meet it if the practical reality is that we can't. I commend the team. You've been creative getting some of these singles and doubles, like the ribbon cutting that we just had. But within 2 years of bulk purchase, basically a quarter of our fleet being brand new diesel buses, we're putting ourselves way behind on the ability to even come close to meeting this policy. And that should be clear to the policymakers. And I think we're behind in being able to communicate that. And I think September, a lot of things are already going to be in motion. And I think this should have become clearer to council much sooner than when it is going to in September.
Any additional discussion? Art, please.
Yeah, just thinking through this September discussion, which I don't know much about beyond what was in the board packet. I think potentially, I don't know if it's helpful framing for that discussion or helpful for this board to think of. There was some discussion amongst the council throughout this budget session about how do we do some long-term planning for the big things that are not funded yet. And this policy's out there, and I think it's got kind of squishy edges because it's fleet replacement and it happens iteratively over time. But the reality is within the 10-year planning window of the capital program, this is $100 million ask the current premium for an electric bus is about $1 million above diesel state of good repair replacement. I'm not making a value judgment on whether it's worth that extra $1 million. I'm just saying from a numerical perspective, meeting that plan over the next 10 years is if we're going to replace somewhere between 90 and 120 buses over that time, it's $100 million. The reason I say that as a package, well, that's a middle school, that's a high school, that's a handful of fire stations, a West End rec center. Like, to me, like, part of the framing is it's on that list, right? Instead of it being drips and drabs here and there, it's a big package. It's paid out over time, equivalent to those. And I think right now it gets lost in a conversation because it's harder for people to wrap their head around. Does that help? It's a much bigger ask than possibly folks have their heads wrapped around. And that's both makes it more daunting, but also it can be positioned in a way that we can understand what it's competing against in a world of limited resources. And of course, there are grant opportunities to help mitigate that aren't there for some of the, school and recreation facilities we have. But I think framing it in that magnitude might help in a larger conversation about planning and prioritization.
Sure. And I think, first of all, that may be the premium that Dash is getting quoted today. That won't be over the planning and execution horizon of this program. So I don't think using 100 million as the number is fair, or at least it doesn't take into account the generally declining trend in battery pricing. So, before you throw that around to other leaders in the city, I suggest that you look at battery price forecasts and educate yourself on the direction that that's going. And maybe that's something that the team can bring in September so that we're all better educated on that. Which kind of brings me to something that I have urged from early on, and I'll continue to urge, and I think between now and September is really important, Josh, is to bring lessons from successes of other of peers. And those may not be regional, they may not be in state, but there are people who are way, way ahead of us on this. And so in terms of the supply chain, pricing, financing of electric buses, there are a lot of lessons all over the country. And somehow we need to tap into that wisdom and use that to inform our plan. Because as a relatively small agency, maybe we're not getting the same pricing that someone else is, but maybe there's a way that we can. And I think that's just something to think about is, the people who are more successful at this than us, what are they doing right? And what can we learn from that?
So I'm going to move us towards wrapping up this item. Kirsten, please do signal if you want to get in. Art, I really appreciate sort of you framing around the aggregate effect of this, right? I think that is why we are trying to have this strategic conversation with council in the fall, is because this stuff can't just be aspirational, right? Like, we do actually have to think about what are the big choices they need to make. And to Raveen's point, that like we need to be making right now if we are going to have any level of success. I think this is a really great dialogue about a very serious discussion. Hillary, I also was very struck by your point that we would rather have these resources than not, right? Like, yeah, and Praveen, you're right. Like, we want to make sure that we're making progress towards these big things that we've established. But, an asset is an asset. And I would imagine even as we have these buses, if we do have the opportunity to then get more electric stock, we can think about, are there other systems that would take a used bus off our hands and sort of recapitalize on some of that? But, given this environment with a federal actor that is less interested in aligning with the stuff that we are most hopeful for, I do think being strategic about how to make this grant conform to the reality that we're faced with, as frustrating as we might find that, I do think that that's the pragmatic choice to make at this moment. And again, like I would rather solve the problem of what to do with the resources that we get than not pursue the resources because of some of the challenges that I think Praveen has very articulately laid out before us. If there is no further discussion or questions for Josh or Raymond, and thank you, Raymond, for walking us through that. It was all really great. We are looking for a motion to advance this letter as part of the application packet for this grant. And am I correct again that the city officials will not be able to make the motion? Are you guys, are you recusing? Are you also abstaining from this?
Your board members.
You vote, but you don't want to be, okay,
Oh.
right.
I'll make the motion to
All right,
adopt.
motion's been made. Is there a second? All right, motion made and second. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, great. And then we'll,
I abstain.
and, okay. And then abstentions, and the abstentions as previously noted, Beth. All right, thank you. And I think we can tag our chair back in.
While he's coming back up, I'll just take a moment, realizing you were out. The origin of the September conversation started during the work session with council over the DASH budget, and it was actually something that the mayor brought up. And then we were really excited about that opportunity. I think it's a really important thing, something that's never happened between the dashboard and city council and the city manager's office. And so this conversation, I think, further exemplifies the value of that. And so that is my last update for you, Mr. Chair. Welcome back. Is that we have normally we would have an item during this meeting to have a quick discussion around the strategic plan. The strategic plan doesn't have to change every year, but it's always important to talk about it and align the goals. And again, think about where we are. Considering that that's happening in September, that's why I didn't bring anything further forward. I feel like it would be premature to have any kind of conversation around that in advance of that much more important conversation in September.
It's actually a very interesting view when you're watching from out there. So thank you, Jesse, for your inaugural presiding duties. I did. Are you going to address further the work session, or that you've covered that update?
We can check it off the list if you want to also talk about it now.
Okay, no, I just wanted to say, you and I have had some conversation already about kind of what that would look like. I know you've also engaged with the city manager and making sure that, everyone's on the same page, and, I've suggested that there'll be communication between our two groups as we get to September, because as I think as the discussion group showed, that we have a lot of kind of future direction that we have to decide, and we have to look at the reality of what those resources are. And also, as I've talked about, we heard from Martin about looking at the FY 2030 of the ATV, and also ensuring that council members understand kind of what are those future service priorities, because our list of unfunded service is actually going to grow over the course of the year as we get to that 2030 full implementation of the plan. And we want them to understand kind of what those decisions were and how we're prioritizing and looking at where we need resources to ensure that we're providing the service that we promised the community to do. So I think it's going to be a really productive session. And I think we also want to make sure we get the amount of time that we need to do it too. And I know that's something that you've been monitoring with
this point. So I'm going to be conversing with you all over the summer as I get more details, and we're going to be pushing to get a date and try to get all that locked in. So appreciate any flexibility in advance.
And that will, the intention is that replaces our September board meeting, assuming it's held in the month of September. So. Okay, so we are, you've covered strategic plan updates. Is that our last? Oh, we have the ridership.
Well, just the ridership report. I'll just summarize by letting you all know that we did discover data validation errors in April. They have been corrected in the system. So although April is still down, Martin and I had a conversation around this as a theory around the timing of ACPS's spring break could have an impact on that. But again, we're still continuing to trend in the right direction, and we're showing some leveling off, I think, of our ridership, which is to be expected, but still strong numbers nonetheless moving forward. We're also including here for you, I dropped in the April chart as well as the May chart for ridership on lines 102, 103, and 104. That was a question that had been asked by the board about the post-return to work impacts. And these are comparisons, of course, of the same month the year prior. So you can see in May up 30% on line 103 and up 63% on line 104 comparatively to May in 2024 and 2023. So strong numbers continuing there.
Yeah, and I'd suggest that even the within 2025 comparison from April to May would suggest that people are having a positive experience with the service. It's not like we saw numbers in April that then dropped off, which would indicate that it wasn't working for people's community. So that's encouraging in itself.
Crowding continues to be our biggest challenge, and we're working as best as we can. And again, I want to thank Martin and his team for being so strategic and creative about how they do the run cutting, right, to create those opportunities to enhance services and make sure that people are experiencing the rides that they should experience. The last item here is just to highlight line 35. Now, line 35 appears down, but in 2024, over 6,000 rides is an anomaly for us. So it still looks like it's up compared to, for example, 2023. But of course, line 35 is a solid ridership regardless of the return to work. So no surprises, particularly there. And then, Mr. Chair, before I hand it back over to you, we've already covered this discussion on strategic plan, but I wanted, as you mentioned, pride in the activities. I just wanted to give a nod to the team for their hard work around that. It was, I know it was not an easy thing to figure out and pull off. And I was to intentionally use the word proud of us showing up both at World Pride, but also on our ribbon cutting for those new buses. And I just wanted to mention to the group that I think the efforts of, again, really appreciate what you said earlier, Praveen, about the importance of collaboration. Putting ourselves out there collaboratively is what caused us to be the ones to be able to provide those cooling buses and have our King Street trolleys seen in the parade, which was basically something to assist and ultimately gave us even more visibility, was really meaningful and hopefully sent a strong message to the community that Alexandria is showing up for them. So we do have additional events coming up. We have the event this upcoming weekend at the brewery. And then we have Alexandria's Pride Festival at the end of the month. We will have a booth there, and please come by. And I don't see Camilla or the team in the audience, but please come by and get some swag. We will make sure we give you some swag to rep the Dash brand, the new Dash brand particularly. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. I wanted just so we don't have a location yet for our September meeting. I believe City Hall will be available, it sounds like, through the end of the calendar year at least. I don't know at what point they're scheduling, but if we can have a conversation over the summer, I would want to continue alternate for as long as we're able to until they begin the construction. I know, for example, because I work the voting at City Hall, I know the November election will still be at City Hall, so the facility will still be available at least into the fall. But so, just to allow for our alternate, obviously our work session will be where council directs and the manager directs, where it will be, but.
Yeah, sorry, the wheels are turning slow. So our next meeting is September 6th. And you were saying that the joint work session, this group is not going to have an ability to convene. There isn't a plan for us to convene and talk about that work session beforehand. I just, we're going into that cold, or are we still there emails?
Well, I guess that's a good point. We need to decide that. It will depend somewhat on, I guess, decisions that need to be made about that. I mean, those are things that we can reach out to members and get reactions through, but if it's helpful to get the board together, I'm for that. I think we need to just flesh out a little more of what we would need direction from the board on. I think the intention was to have I think that we were going to share the draft presentation in advance, because obviously that would have to be prepared, I think, well before the city, just because of their submission requirements. So we would want to at least allow this board to have input on that before that's finalized. But whether we need to get the group together, I'm open to it if that would be helpful.
Well, I'm certainly not.
Or we can have smaller conversations too.
I'm certainly not an advocate of all meetings, but I think it's not that the board has to be united in its message, but clearly, we just had a pretty fruitful discussion about the big challenge facing us, and just sitting for 3 months, and then the next time we all see each other in one place, there seems something to think about. Also,
September could be aspirational for that joint work session. There's a lot of grand planning meetings planned for September, it sounds like. So, I'm sure we'll be working on figuring out when all those things are. So.
Yeah, I mean, my conversation with the city manager did not give me a date, I think for that reason. But I would also share a little bit of my vision about it is also that once we establish what that date might look like, sort of backing into it and figuring out an outline, presentations, timing, what timing do we have to work with? Certainly circulating that to you all. And maybe that's an opportunity to potentially have a week before Zoom meeting or something potentially for you as a board, because you have the right to do that and it's built into your policies, whether if it might be too hard to get together in person, at least to go over that outline and have a conversation around that. We'll certainly facilitate in any way that's needed. I wish I had better information and I was kind of pushing for that, but it didn't happen. So I don't know when I'll know that. It may not be until later in the summer anyway.
There have been work sessions before beyond the stockholders meeting where Dash, usually the general manager, has presented directly to council. The board has never had a work session outside of at least I believe in Dash's history, outside of the stockholders meetings. And so the idea was that we would participate in that as well and have the opportunity to kind of shape the discussion as well, because we ultimately have to have buy-in and agree to these decisions that council is going to make, because we're the governing body of this board. So yeah, I think it is important that we go in and be thoughtful about what we're going to say. And I know that we will be based on what I saw of the discussion out there. But yeah, I think it's important that we not have any surprises. We understand what staff is going to present and what the recommendations are. So we'll continue. We'll chat over the summer and make sure that we that. And I suppose if it goes later, then we will have a regular board meeting in September. Our September agenda is usually very light. We often use that for some of our Freedom of Information and Sunshine Act refreshers, which I think everyone has, with the exception of Laura, who I'm sure has had that in other groups that she's part of, has been through that at least once. So I wasn't necessarily thinking we had to do that this coming September, but we'll figure out then what makes sense. But I appreciate your suggestion, Art. I think it's a good one. While the presentation is dancing to say have a great summer, so we'll figure out the.
It's supposed to be a wave, right?
Supposed to be-
Everybody go with the ocean.
So we will figure out the board schedule and certainly talk about how we will rotate. And we have a room here, of course, always as our base once City Hall becomes unavailable. Is there any other business to come before the board tonight? If not, we say thank you and all the best to Steve, who it sounds like will still be here for a few months in town. So I wasn't sure if you were planning to move over the summer, but I'm glad that you'll be here. So do drop in to see us, and we will miss you greatly. So. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Move Jesse. Is there a second? Second Steve. Final vote. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, and have a great summer.
Everyone.
I live in Hillsborough.